This happened when I was a little kid, maybe 6 or 7. My family was deeply religious, and holidays like Easter were treated with reverence, almost like sacred rituals. Even Sundays felt like holy celebrations in our house. Church was everything. Some of my earliest memories are of echoing hymns, candlelight, and sermons I didn't fully understand. What I'm about to share is one of those early memories, buried for years, only to resurface like something long dead clawing back to life. It was Easter Sunday. The service had run longer than usual, an exhausting affair of hymns and prayer, but I didn't mind. My parents had raised me to love it, to find comfort in the ritual. After Mass, they led me downstairs to the classrooms for Sunday school. The layout of our church was strange, almost like it had been built in layers. The sanctuary was upstairs, where sunlight spilled through stained glass windows. The classrooms, though, were tucked in the basement, shadowed and quiet, with a hallway that stretched long and narrow, lined with rooms on both sides. My classroom was one of the first on the left. At the far end of the hallway were 2 bathrooms and a heavy grey door. It led outside, but it was always locked. We were warned never to touch it. Once it closed, it couldn't be opened from the outside. That door, they said, was only for emergencies. The basement had been dressed up for the holiday. Pastel streamers, paper lambs, and cutouts of Jesus and children were taped to the walls. Teachers wore silly bunny ears. It should have felt festive, joyful, but something about it felt off, like the decorations were trying too hard to hide something rotten beneath. All the kids were excited for the egg hunt later. Laughter echoed off the cinder block walls. Normally, I waited until class was over to use the bathroom, but the long service had pushed me to my limit. I raised my hand, got permission, and stepped out quietly while the others colored pictures of Jesus rising from the tomb. The bathroom was just a few doors down. Dimly lit, cold, silent except for the buzz of the flickering fluorescent light. I picked a stall and closed the door behind me. Then, the noise started. A slow, scraping sound came from the stall next to mine. It wasn't the rustle of clothes or a door latch. It was sharp and uneven, metal dragging across metal, like claws against a locker. I froze, trying to make sense of it. Maybe another kid, maybe a janitor, but no one spoke, no footsteps. Just that metallic scratch, like something testing the door from inside. I rushed to finish. As I turned to the sink, I caught movement in the mirror. The stall next to mine was slowly opening. And stepping out wasn't a kid. It was a man. Or at least, something dressed like one. He wore an Easter bunny costume, but it was nothing like the cheerful kind you see at malls. The fur was matted and grey, stained in places like it had been pulled from a pile of garbage. The ears drooped forward unnaturally, and one of the plastic eyes had been sewn back on, crooked and staring. He didn't move quickly, just stood there, watching. At that moment, I wasn't afraid. Not yet. But I should have been. In my young mind, it was just the Easter bunny making a surprise visit. I actually smiled when I turned around. I think I even said, "Hi!" He didn't respond. He just stood there, half emerged from the stall, his head tilted slightly to one side, motionless. I remember the silence stretching on, awkward and strange, like time itself was waiting for him to move. Then, slowly, he stepped out. One gloved arm rose, unnaturally slow, pointing toward the door as if he was guiding me. And then, in a voice muffled by the costume but unmistakably human, he finally spoke. "You're the lucky chosen child. I have a gift for you, outside." I didn't hesitate. There was no fear, only excitement. I thought I'd been picked for something special. I truly believed this was part of some magical Easter surprise. And maybe because we were inside a church, I felt safe, protected. Like nothing bad could possibly happen. So I pushed open the big grey door. The same door I'd been told never to use. The Easter bunny followed me out, silent again. He didn't explain anything, just began walking across the cracked pavement, leading me toward the far corner of the church parking lot. There was a car parked there, mostly hidden behind the dumpster and a few dead bushes. I remember thinking how odd it was that he had parked so far away. And there wasn't even a basket of candy in sight. No eggs, no colourful decorations, just him. At some point, he reached out and gently took my hand. We were nearly halfway across the lot when I saw it. Another Easter bunny. This second one stepped out from behind the car he was leading me to. My feet stopped moving. My little brain couldn't process what I was seeing. 2 Easter bunnies? Why? How? I looked between them, trying to make sense of it. But everything inside me was starting to twist. The excitement was gone. The magic had curdled into something cold and wrong. And then, what happened next, I've always believed, was divine intervention. One of the teachers, Miss Sabrina, had been walking around outside, maybe setting up for the egg hunt. She turned toward the lot just as I was being led to the car. She saw us, and she screamed. It was a scream that cut through the quiet like a blade, a scream of pure, unfiltered terror. The man in the costume let go of my hand instantly. He bolted toward the car, and I, without thinking, ran in the opposite direction, back toward Miss Sabrina's arms. I turned just in time to see the car speeding out of the lot. I'm not completely sure, but I swear I saw another child in the back seat. Miss Sabrina hadn't seen it, but I told her everything I'd seen. She didn't brush it off. She believed me. She took me straight to the other adults. The police were called. The next few hours are a blur. I was questioned again and again. What did the man look like? What about the other kid? Could I describe him? I tried, but I had only seen him for a second, a face in a dark window, a blur. Maybe my mind was making it up. Maybe not. I'll never know for sure. My parents were devastated. My mom cried for hours once we were home. The police followed up with the church, but nothing came of it. There were no missing children reported in the area, no evidence left behind. The running theory was that someone had gotten a key to the back door. They waited in the bathroom, hidden in plain sight, just waiting for some unlucky kid to walk in. And that kid had been me. But what unsettles me most is the precision. Whoever it was, he knew the layout. He knew how to move, where to park, where to wait. He had done this with purpose. And I'm still haunted by the thought that there really was another child in that car. Every Easter since, no matter how bright the decorations, no matter how joyful the songs, I remember. I remember the hand in mine, the silence behind the mask, and the car disappearing into the distance with a child I never saw again. Easter was still fun for me and my friends, but not for the usual reasons. We'd outgrown those cutesy egg hunts years ago. These days, I mostly just cringed when my parents made me help out with my little cousin's hunts. A few years back, we couldn't even remember exactly when, we came up with our own version of the tradition. A twisted remix. Something a little more our speed. We called it Egg Hunt Manhunt Edition. 2 teams, just like Manhunt. But the twist? The seekers not only had to find the hiders, they were also responsible for hiding and protecting a few plastic eggs. If the hiders found all the eggs before getting caught, they won. And if the seekers couldn't tag every hider before time ran out, same deal. There were a few dumb rules like no egg camping, but they weren't important. It was the Thursday before Easter. School was cancelled the next day, so we figured, why not turn it into a sleepover? The crew that night. Me, Jake, Race, Chuck, Arthur, and Raz. Raz wasn't his real name, his last name was Razzie, but nobody called him anything else. His house was massive, out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods. And with his parents out of town until Friday night, it was perfect. We were chilling in the basement, controller cords tangled, snacks everywhere, quiet to start. When Chuck pitched it, let's play Egg Hunt Manhunt. We were all in. Raz had a stash of old plastic Easter eggs from his mom, and we grabbed what flashlights we could find in the garage. To keep it fair, we used Jake's phone to shuffle up random teams. I got teamed up with Chuck and Raz. We were the seekers. Jake and Arthur would be hiding. We stepped outside. The sun was already down, the sky dimming into twilight. We'd played out here a bunch, so we knew the land. Fence line at the far end, a creek on one side, a slope that led down to the horse pasture beyond the woods. We gave everyone 10 minutes, enough time for the hiders to vanish into the night and for us seekers to stash our eggs. Then the timer beeped. Game on. We split up to cover more ground. I veered left into a thicker stretch of trees, flashlight gripped tight but dimmed. I scanned the ground with it occasionally, careful not to give away my position. The game was more intense when it felt like you were really hunting. Besides, if the hiders spotted your beam, they'd just run. A few minutes in, something shifted ahead, 20, maybe 30 feet. I paused. Was it real? Just shadows? Then it moved again. I killed my flashlight and crouched low, heart pounding. Someone was hiding behind a tree. Perfectly still. They hadn't seen me. My first thought? Race. He always chose the worst hiding spots, figured no one would think to look so close to the start. So I circled around, trying to get behind him without being noticed. I crept quietly, every step calculated, and when I was close enough, I lunged, tapped the figure on the shoulder. Gotcha! He turned, and my blood turned to ice. It wasn't Race, it wasn't any of my friends, it was a man, a grown man. His hair was slicked back, greasy, his eyes wild and glassy, staring like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were torn and filthy, and he stank like rot and gasoline. I froze, paralyzed in shock, and then he tackled me. I slammed into the dirt, breath knocked out of me. Before I could scream again, his hands clamped around my throat, tight, crushing, his entire weight pressing down. Panic flooded me. I thrashed beneath him, clawing at his arms, kicking. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. This wasn't a game anymore. This was real, and I was going to die in the woods behind my best friend's house. I didn't have the strength to throw him off, not from the ground. But just when I thought I was about to black out, he stopped. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A flashlight beam cutting through the trees behind us. Flickering, bouncing. Someone was coming. He must have seen it too. Without a word, he launched off me and bolted into the woods, gone in an instant like he'd never been there at all. I just lay there, coughing, gasping for air, chest heaving, still too stunned to move. A few seconds later, Chuck crashed through the underbrush and dropped beside me. "I saw the whole thing," he said, pulling me up. His voice was shaky, but steady enough to make me listen. My adrenaline was still in overdrive. "We have to go after him," I said, half stumbling forward. Chuck grabbed my arm. "No, that's a terrible idea." He was right. We didn't know who or what we were dealing with. So instead we turned and sprinted back toward the house. Chuck called the rest of the guys, told them to head back immediately. No questions. When we regrouped in Raz's living room, I told them everything, what happened, what I saw, while Chuck filled in the rest. The room exploded. Everyone was talking over each other, trying to make sense of it, until Arthur spoke, and everything stopped. He said that before the game even started, before we'd even finished the 10-minute setup timer, he'd seen two people walking through the woods. Not one, two. He'd been crouched near a patch of trees close to the edge of the slope and saw them moving slowly, methodically, like they were watching, waiting. At the time, he'd gotten annoyed. He thought it was two seekers breaking the rules and teaming up, but it wasn't. Chuck, Raz, and I looked at each other and shook our heads. None of us had been walking together. None of us had time to cross the field and get to their side that fast. The silence that followed was heavy, chilling. Because if it wasn't any of us, then there had been at least 3 strangers out there in the woods. One who attacked me, and 2 more watching before the game had even begun. A sick, sinking feeling settled in my gut. If Chuck hadn't stopped me from running after the guy, I might have walked right into the rest of them. I said we had to call the cops. I had been attacked. That wasn't something you just let go. But Raz cut in, sharper than I'd ever heard him before. "No," he said, "we're not calling anyone." I blinked at him. "Dude, what?" He hesitated for a second, then sighed. "I'm grounded. My parents don't even know I had anyone over. If the cops show up, I'm done. I'll never be able to hang out again, let alone host anything," I argued. I told him this was serious. Someone could have been killed. But he didn't budge. And honestly, the rest of the guys weren't much help. No one wanted to screw Raz over with his parents. Eventually, I gave in. Told myself I'd just go home in the morning and put it all behind me. But I didn't sleep that night. I lay there in my sleeping bag, staring at the basement ceiling, listening to every creak and rustle outside. And when the sun finally came up, I grabbed my stuff and left before anyone else was even awake. You'd probably think something like that would haunt me forever, but truthfully, it didn't. I've always believed bad things happen sometimes. People move on. That's what I did. At least, until about a week later. Raz texted the group, saying he'd gone back out to collect the Easter eggs. By himself. Said he felt bad just leaving them out there, even though he was scared out of his mind. We laughed at the time, thought it was classic Raz. But that message stuck with me. It made me think about that night again. What we'd really seen. Who those people were. What they wanted. And why they were already waiting out there before our game even started. I never went back to Raz's after that. I didn't care how big the house was or how far out it was. Something about that place felt wrong. Now I'm off at college, a long, long way from that forest, but Easter's coming up again next month, and for the first time in a long while, I'm not looking forward to it. I'd been to Uncle John's place more times than I could count, but I'd never actually wandered into the woods behind his house. I'm not much of a nature person, so I never had a reason to. Truth be told, I was dreading the trip. My extended family? Not exactly my tribe. They're all about the outdoors, hunting, fishing, all that. Most of them have lived in the same small town their entire lives, while I've always been the outsider, the city kid, the one who didn't quite belong. And to make it worse, most of my cousins are way older, married, with kids, or managing some family farm. The only one remotely close to my age is Kevin. He's a couple years older, but he's chill. Kind of my designated survival buddy during these family holidays. We always end up sticking together by default, and he's good at keeping things relaxed without trying too hard. We drove in late that Friday, just me and my parents, since I'm an only child, and I was so wiped from the car ride that I crashed right after we got there. The next morning, Kevin and I killed time in the basement, messing around with Uncle John's dusty old pool table. Neither of us was any good, but it was better than awkward small talk upstairs with half the family packed into one room. The basement didn't have a TV, so Kevin played music off his phone while we bantered about whatever dumb family drama had bubbled up this year. Nothing worth remembering. At some point, he started talking about the woods behind the house, said they went on for miles, that no one ever really explored them all the way. He described them like something out of a storybook, quiet, untouched, peaceful. I just nodded along, not really getting it. Nature's never been my thing, but Kevin clearly had a connection to the place. Somehow, before I knew it, he convinced me to go on a walk out there with him. Boredom is a powerful motivator. We told Uncle John we were heading out. He was cool about it as always. Honestly, I wish my own parents had his chill approach. Kevin led the way, cutting across the backyard and into the tree line like he'd done it 100 times, which, knowing him, he probably had. The woods were dense, but not wild. There was this subtle, natural path, barely worn, like it was only used by deer and guys like Kevin who treated the forest like their second home. It wasn't too late in the day, but the deeper we went, the darker it got. Trees packed tight, the canopy thick. After about 20 minutes, I started to feel uneasy. I asked Kevin if he was sure he knew where we were. He just laughed. "I've been running around these woods since I was a kid," he said. "I know 'em like the back of my hand." Another 20 minutes passed. Then we stopped at the exact same moment, because up ahead, somewhere deeper in the trees, we heard it. Thunk. It was loud, sharp, not a branch snapping or a squirrel hopping around. This was deliberate. Thunk. A pause, then another. It sounded like something or someone slamming a heavy hammer or mallet into wood, over and over. Kevin glanced at me. I could see it on his face. He didn't have a clue what it was either. He said it could be a hunter, maybe messing with some gear, but even as he said it, he didn't sound convinced. Then it stopped, just like that. No fade out, just silence. I asked if he wanted to head back. He shook his head, eyes locked in the direction the sound had come from. He was curious now. And I'll admit it, I was too. So we kept walking, this time more cautiously. Every sound felt louder. Every shadow stretched longer. We'd only gone a few more minutes when Kevin abruptly stopped and threw his arm out in front of me. I froze, heart skipping. "Did you see someone?" I whispered. He didn't answer, just pointed up. At first I didn't get it. The branches above us looked normal, just more tangled trees. But then my eyes adjusted, and I saw them. 3 shapes, hanging high in the trees. 3 upside-down crosses. They were nailed into 3 adjacent trees. Not carved, not painted. Nailed. And way up, easily 15, maybe 20 feet off the ground. No way someone could have reached that high without a ladder. Kevin and I were frozen, trying to make sense of it, when I caught a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned my head and felt the blood drain from my face. There was a man standing there. He looked like something out of a horror movie, thick flannel shirt, full beard, and eyes so dark they seemed to suck in the light. He didn't say anything at first, just stared, right at me. Kevin instinctively stepped in front of me, blocking part of the guy's view. Then the man finally spoke. "You shouldn't be here." That's all he said. Kevin quickly stammered out an apology, saying we were leaving, that we hadn't meant to trespass. We turned and walked, fast. The man didn't follow, he didn't even move, just kept staring at us like a statue in the trees. I could feel my hands trembling. My legs wanted to run, but I forced myself to keep pace with Kevin. Neither of us spoke. We kept glancing behind us the entire way back, but it was impossible to tell if we were being followed. When we finally made it out of the woods, the first thing we did was go to Uncle John. We told him everything about the sound, the crosses, the man, and that's when the real dread hit. Because Uncle John, friendly, unshakable Uncle John, suddenly went quiet. He looked us dead in the eye and said no one around here matches that description. He asked if we were followed, repeatedly. We told him no, we didn't think so. But how could we be sure? Someone suggested arming up and sweeping the woods, but Uncle John shot that down fast. He didn't want to risk leading anyone back to the house. So Kevin and I went back to the basement. Everyone else pretended to resume their Easter planning, but the tension never left the air. I didn't talk about it, but it messed with my head. Bat! I went to bed early just to escape it all, but that meant I woke up way earlier than usual. When I rolled over and checked my phone, it was just after 5 a.m. The sun was barely breaking the horizon, just the faintest light creeping through the dark. I couldn't get back to sleep, so I figured I'd sneak upstairs and find something to read in Uncle John's study on the 3rd floor. That room has a massive old window that looks out over the backyard. As I passed it, I noticed something, a faint flickering glow just at the edge of the woods. At first I thought it might be a lantern, maybe a dying campfire. But as I kept watching, I realized what I was seeing. 3 figures, standing just beyond the tree line, each holding a torch, not moving, not pacing, just standing. Facing the house, facing me. I bolted downstairs and woke Uncle John, adrenaline surging. I could barely get the words out, but the moment I did, he didn't hesitate. He grabbed his rifle, threw on a pair of pants and told me to stay inside. I watched from the back door as he stepped out onto the deck, scanning the yard, but by then they were gone. The torches, the figures, gone. Still, he raised the rifle and fired 3 shots straight into the air. The sound cracked through the trees and shattered the early morning stillness. Within minutes, the whole house was awake. Chaos erupted. And yeah, Easter morning was pretty much ruined after that. Everyone was rattled. The whole day we were looking over our shoulders, waiting for something else to happen, but nothing did. Eventually it was time to go, and I won't lie, I was more than ready to get out of there. That was 9 months ago. Uncle John says nothing weird has happened since. No strange visitors, no sounds, no fires in the trees, but still. If it were me living in that house, I don't think I'd ever sleep soundly again. And if Uncle John ever does call with an update, you'll be the first to know.